Sadly, the current state of international adoption has been declining for the last few years. They only anticipate about 7,500 adoptions to be processed with the United States with some other country. While that number may seem high, at its peak in 2005, there was approximately 23,000 international adoptions being processed with U.S. couples. I think many families have been actually surprised at the options that are here in the United States. One is adoptions through the state, where you can typically find toddler-age children all the way to teenagers. And then there's a newborn and infant or private adoption, where you can work with agencies like ourselves or adoption attorneys to expand your family.
Domestic adoption is when an adoptive family right here in the United States is matched with a birth mother that's also here in the United States. She is going to be involved in selecting the adoptive family, having contact with the adoptive family prior to placement. They're going to be interacting at the hospital typically during the time of labor and delivery, and then the child as a newborn, most of the time, once discharged from the hospital, is going to go directly with that adoptive family. That being said, there are three main differences between domestic and international adoption. Typically, when a family switches from international adoption to domestic adoption, we need to have an update done with a new visit to the home.
To convert a home study from an international home study to a domestic home study is not that bad of a process. The type of child is essentially the main difference. So if a couple's looking to adopt an older child, there's going to be education and training specific to issues that may arise with an older child, where a home study done for a newborn or infant specifically deal with issues of taking care of a baby, in addition to things like cultural issues. So if you're going to be adopting abroad, they may go over extensively the cultural issues of that specific country, where domestically, unless you're adopting a child of a different race than your own, they may not go into the same level of detail because you're adopting a child of the same race. We would just encourage a family to reach out to their home study provider, and they could walk them step by step through that process.
Unlike an international adoption, where you will rarely have contact with the birth parents, in domestic adoption, it is very common for birth parents to want to have some contact with the adoptive family.
Most adoptions are at least semi-open to an open adoption in today's day and age. So oftentimes adoptive families have to be open to at least having an adoption professional help mediate the relationship, if not having direct contact with the birth parent themselves.
Typically, a birth parent and an adoptive couple or adoptive family are interacting together. We can talk about contact prior to the placement of the child. So during that match period, having a conference call, possibly having some emails.
Most women who are pregnant and considering adoption at least want letters and pictures or updates of how the child's doing. A lot of times for her, it allows her the ability to heal from the loss and grief of placing a child for adoption, to know that adoption was a good choice and that that baby is healthy and happy and thriving in the new environment that the child's in. The family will interact with the birth parents throughout the hospital experience. In most cases, they spend time in her room with her, sometimes with the baby, sometimes without the baby. Sometimes they're in the labor and delivery room with the birth mother. That's a request that some mothers need that support because they don't have anyone else there to support them with their adoption plan. So the adoptive mother, her role becomes quite crucial in building that trust.
What's really neat about an adoptive couple being able to be there at the hospital is they, for one, get to really know that child from day one, which is great, and that's wonderful for bonding, but also just really knowing what's going on in that child's life. So being able to ask those questions of the doctors, hey, what does this test mean? Hey, how is the health? And being able to just kind of have that full background, as well as really getting some of that education at the hospital, learning from the nurses, and especially for first-time parents, that ability to be at the hospital and learn how to swaddle a baby can be really beneficial.
Adoptive families, when they do consider domestic adoption as an option, things that they find that are very important, first off, is medical information. The access to medical information can start during prenatal care, and then you can get access to records as soon as the baby is born. Here in the United States, U.S. hospital systems do as good as anywhere in terms of document record keeping and retention, so you can get access to records that you may struggle to find abroad. The other is that you potentially can have some type of ongoing relationship with a birth parent that could be anywhere from closed to open, that oftentimes is mediated through an adoption professional, where your access to medical information can continue for years to come. So as questions arise with the medical history of that child, oftentimes you have the ability to at least try to make contact with that person to seek out whatever questions you may have. And then lastly, adoptees oftentimes at some point in their adult life may want to get either additional medical information or just have questions about where their eye color came from, or why they're tall or short, or whatever it may be. They have the ability to talk to their birth parents about some of those questions and ideas.
As an adoptive couple is trying to make a decision about which type of adoption to pursue, whether it be international, domestic, possibly through the state or private, like here at American Adoptions, do some research, take your time, talk to people who have been involved in the process, and really decide, which risks you are willing to take. Each process has pros and cons, and each process has its own risks. So you really just have to educate yourself and find the most comfortable way for you to build your family.